Why are you attacking me? I'm speaking your language. I have built a version of Guitar Hero in Minecraft, which can be programmed to play any song. Before we get into how it works though, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, and if you want to see more content like this, please consider checking out some other videos on this channel or subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. The main part is this array of 12 piston feed tapes, which essentially stores the position of the notes. Each one of them is made up of a loop of glass which gets pushed around and a loop of redstone which runs around, powering each of the pistons after short delays from each other. So, as you can see, when I activate this monostable circuit to essentially inject a pulse into the redstone loop, the pulse runs around, triggering each of the pistons one by one. The glass isn't actually moving around, however. So in order to make that happen, we need to place a block in front of the first piston which will be activated, which in this case is this one, and as you can see when we go ahead and activate it now, it's working a lot more like it should. Now, if I place a cauldron here and fill it with water, when we turn on this piston feed tape, it'll get pushed down, causing this comparator to trigger this piston, causing a 1-tick pulse to run through this redstone wire, triggering this observer chain, causing a note to run down this string of redstone lamps. I'm using cauldrons here as redstone blocks could cause pistons to power via quasi-connectivity when the feed tape was running, breaking the whole thing. However, as you can see, it works perfectly and we get a note on these redstone lamps. The feed tape, however, is much too slow. As you can see, even with cauldrons right next to each other, we still get notes very infrequently. To help fix this, instead of injecting pulses at only one point on the redstone loop, we do it simultaneously at every other piston. For example, we inject a pulse right here and have a block in front of this piston, as it will be the first to be activated by this pulse. We skip this piston, and then inject another pulse here, with another block in front of this piston, and so on. This, incidentally, is why here, for example, there are a lot of repeaters set to 1 or 2 ticks, instead of having fewer repeaters set to 3 or 4 ticks. Here, for example, with these repeaters each set to 1 tick, this piston is going up and down periodically, just like this piston. If, however, I increase the delays of these repeaters, this piston remains extended even though this piston is still going up and down. So having more repeaters with shorter delays kind of helps to prevent the pulses from joining up and creating one bigger pulse. Back up here, however, when I press this button which activates all of these monostable circuits simultaneously, you can see that we get multiple concurrent redstone pulses on the same redstone line. And as you can see right here, each time a pulse passes this point, this piston triggers and pushes the glass away, so the glass is getting pushed around much quicker. If, however, just like down there, I lengthen the delays of these repeaters a bit, you can see that it all starts to break and glass gets pushed down here. When we don't break it though, you can see that notes are now appearing much more frequently. There's still quite a big gap in between them though, so instead of having only 1 piston feed tape per string of redstone lamps, I've put in 3. Each one activates after a slight delay from the last one, so now when we turn it on, we get a nearly unbroken block of redstone lamps. It isn't perfect, but it's pretty good, and since to be able to have a node at every single position would require 19 feed tapes all feeding into one string, I've decided to leave it at only 3. And with all 12 feed tapes working together, it's possible to create any pattern of notes on all 4 strings. If you want to, you can lengthen the feed tapes so you have more space to put notes if you have a longer song by just copying this section over and over, like over here. As long as you still inject a pulsat and place a block in front of every other piston, the feed tape will still move around at exactly the same speed. This is probably unnecessary for most songs, however, as I only used about 70% of these feed tapes for the whole of Pig Step, which is 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so you should be fine as long as you aren't trying to record anything like American Pie. All 12 of the feed tapes are activated by this redstone line, which is powered by this button which is pressed to start the song. This redstone line also powers all of these repeaters, which after a longish delay turn this redstone torch off, causing these diamond swords in the dispenser to drop into the hopper, gradually decreasing the signal strength of the comparator output, creating a countdown effect with these redstone lamps, telling you when to put a disc into the jukebox. I could have taken a comparator output from the jukebox and started the feed tapes when a disc was inserted. However, there's long delay from the feed tapes being activated and the notes reaching the bottom of the strings, so there would have been no notes for a decent portion of the intro, and since you can't play a music disc by feeding a hopper into a jukebox in Java Edition, I was stuck with this system. Now, let's move on to the circuits responsible for playing a sound when you get a note wrong. Back here, this observer triggers when this observer has triggered, showing that a note has reached this point on the string. The pulse that this observer creates goes through this pulse extender to increase its length to 5 ticks, and then up along this redstone line. There are a large number of repeaters along this redstone line to ensure that the signal reaches this piston at exactly the right time when the note has reached the bottom of the string. Since each of these levers are next to each other, they all have to power one redstone line. However, it's still possible to tell which lever has been flicked by using signal strength. Down here, for example, when I turn on this lever, even though all of this redstone is connected, this redstone line is so long that the power level here is 1, but the power level here is 0, so these two blocks, and thus these two redstone lamps, don't power. It works exactly the same back up here. All of these observers are placed so far away from the levers, so that when I flick this lever, for example, only this redstone lamp turns on, and when I flick this lever, only this redstone lamp turns on, and so on. If this observer detects an update to the signal strength of this redstone, meaning that the corresponding lever was flicked, and gives an output while this piston is not powered, meaning that there was a note present at the bottom of the string, then the lever was flicked at the wrong time, and the signal simply runs through to this note block. If this piston is powered, however, then the lever has been flicked at the right time when a note is present at the bottom of the string, and the signal instead powers this piston, causing it to push down its cauldron, which is full of water, causing this piston to push its block out of the way. Then, when this redstone line powers, signifying that the note has finished, this falling edge monostable circuit powers this piston, causing it to push the cauldron back up. If the observer didn't trigger when this piston was extended, however, then this cauldron won't have been pushed down, and this piston would have pushed its block out of the way, so this falling edge monostable circuit will also power this block, and thus power this note block. Back here, the redstone line updating this observer also runs off here to activate the redstone lamps on the floor. First though, since this observer will update whenever the corresponding lever is flicked, regardless of whether it was flicked at the right time or not, this block prevents this redstone dust from joining up with this redstone line, preventing a signal from being sent. When this redstone line is powered, however, this piston pushes the block out of the way, allowing the redstone dust to join up and send a signal through. This right here is an instant repeater. Normal repeaters have 1 tick of delay, which, since we want the redstone lamps on the floor to power as soon as the lever is flicked, would be much too long, considering we would need several of them on this long redstone line, so instead, this instant repeater gives a redstone output with a signal strength of 15 in the same tick that is powered. This design, however, requires a 3-tick signal length, so up here is a small pulse extender. There's a glass block here, as if a repeater's output is linked to its input, it will stay on forever. Redstone power cannot, however, travel down a glass block, and thus it acts as a sort of diode, preventing the repeaters from powering themselves. When the signal has come all the way down and reached this point, these two instant repeaters power these two fader pulse extenders, which power these two redstone lines. Since target blocks redirect redstone power, as you can see, it's possible to place them right next to the redstone lines and power the redstone lamps that way. Their ability to redirect redstone power is also used here to power these two instant repeaters from this redstone line. The same thing happens with these 3 circuits as well, however on these two, the signal just goes through 2 layers of redstone torches first to achieve the same effect, but to place these redstone lines lower, as if they were at the same height as these ones, then the signals would kind of bleed through, and we wouldn't be able to power the different arrays of redstone lamps independently. The exact same systems are used everywhere for playing a sound when you get a note wrong and powering the redstone lamps on the floor. The only small difference is, these redstone lines first go through instant repeaters before going down to these observers, however this has no effect on anything. Anyway, now that you know how it works, let's turn it on. There you go, that was Guitar Hero in Minecraft. Thank you for watching, goodbye.